Thank you, Susan, for joining us. I'm sorry that we had a little bit of a technical issue this morning for those of you who are watching, but it is great to have Susan here with you. For a tiny little bit of background, this webinar is being hosted by Energy Action Network, and we're a diverse network of over 200 nonprofits, businesses, utilities, public agencies, and other organizations working together to achieve Vermont's climate and energy commitments in ways that create a more just, thriving, and sustainable future for Vermonters. And one of the things that Energy Action Network does is that we convene various network action teams, which are groups of folks in the network who are trying to get certain work done. And one of those network action teams is trying to build the climate workforce. There's a couple of different ways that we're looking at that. One group is talking with potential employees, and there's some really exciting work happening right now with focus groups with specific demographics of people who might want to move into climate careers. And then on the employer side, we wanted to provide some resources as well. And we asked Susan to come and do this webinar on low and no cost retention techniques, because we hear from employers that that is one of the things that they need. And so a really brief introduction of Susan. Susan is Director of Administrative Operations and Human Resources at Washington County Mental Health Services. Susan is an accomplished certified senior human resource executive with over 25 years of experience as a business leader. She's a subject matter expert in areas of business acumen, talent acquisition, training and development, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and employee relations. And Susan, we're so glad to have you here. Right before I hand it over, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A if you have a Q&A button, and we will get to those at the end of this presentation. And with that, Susan, over to you.
Thanks so much, Kara. I feel like I should be accepting an award. You know, the Grammy goes to. Well, thank you.
Next time I'll remember to have a Grammy.
Next time we'll have. I need a tiara or something. Thanks everybody for having me in. I'm pretty passionate and I really enjoy these topics. As Kara said, I've been working in HR for a long time, but I also just want to share with folks, before I came to work at Washington County Mental Health, I worked in the renewable energy industry. So I'm a little bit familiar with some of the work that some of you may do, and also obviously as a concerned citizen, concerned about climate change and workforce issues, all rolled into one. So Kara asked me to put together some information, and I am pretty tightly connected with SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management. So I teach for them and I've taught for them for many, many years. So what I'd love to do is share some information, some data that I pulled together. And as Kara said, feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I assume you'll monitor that, because I can't always walk and chew gum at the same time. So let me share my screen and let's do this. See if I can get this full screen here. Right, and just waiting for my screen to load here. Okay, can you just see the one slide, or are you seeing the display with the next slide?
I'm seeing the display as well.
Okay.
It's not the next slide. What I'm seeing is the slide in the middle and then the slides off to the left, like the small version.
All right. I just really want the one.
Okay, now I'm seeing your slide and your next slide. We're getting closer.
I was going to say, what? I'm looking for the display. Sorry about this, folks.
There's something at the top that says display settings. I don't know if that's what you're looking for. Oh, there you go, maybe.
I'm not seeing the display settings. That's my, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm getting there. Hang on. How about now? Yes?
Still seeing the same.
Are you seeing the one, just the one
Now,
slide?
there we go. Okay,
All
we're
right,
all good.
perfect. Awesome. Great. So I'm going to talk about some survey information that came from SHRM, the National HR Organization. They actually did a study called Better Workplaces on a Budget, which seemed to fit in with some of the work that you're doing on your committees. Some turnover results, but also some recommendations. So I find that I go to a lot of these seminars and I'm like, great, I know what the problem is. How do I fix it, right? So I'm going to review some of those results at a high level. And we're going to talk briefly about the top 10 or 12 reasons why employees leave. And I'm sure these will resonate with many of you. But we're going to focus on the top 9. And we're going to go through them one at a time and talk through hopefully some practical ideas that you can implement to reduce your turnover and attrition with and without available funding. So I noticed in this survey, they said, if you have money, you can do these things. If you don't have money, you can do those things. So I'm really going to focus on the low cost, no cost things, but just to give you an idea of maybe some aspirational things. And I'm going to share some of the things that have worked for us in my nonprofit, just by way of explanation. We are a privately held nonprofit. We have 800 employees on a good day. We help folks that have mental health and developmental disability challenges. Like you, we're struggling. We have over 150 job openings right now. So we're also going through some of this work with you. And so I'll tell you things that have worked for us, and I'm open to questions as well. There's a slide on kind of how do we start this? It's a little overwhelming. And then we'll have some discussion at the end. So the survey was really done because, as many of you have recognized, we're hearing things, quiet quitting and people leaving their jobs. I just read something the other day that's a new thing called resenteeism. That's a mouthful. People feeling now that they're stuck in their jobs and they can't quit because we've seen some layoffs and some other things happening with the economy. But so they're not quiet quitting, but they're mad, and so they're having really negative attitudes. So morale gets fed into all of these things as well. So anyway, people have more opportunities. It used to be that if you had funding, you could throw some money at the problem and people would stay, but that's no longer the case. People are looking for alternative careers. So part of the reason they did this survey, they wanted to see why people are leaving, what can we do about it with and without money, and maybe the role that technology might play in all of this in the context of a pandemic. So these are the top reasons people are leaving. And the very top reason is inadequate total compensation. And as I said, I work in a nonprofit, so I hear this a lot, and we'll talk a little bit about what total compensation means. This isn't necessarily just about paycheck. It's some of those other indirect and non-financial parts of your compensation package that might be causing people to leave. And the other also ran, so lack of career development, lack of workplace flexibility, unsustainable work expectations. People are working harder and longer and not feeling that they're being respected. Uncaring and uninspiring leaders. We're going to skip some of the geographic stuff. Unsupportive coworkers, inadequate resources, a lack of meaningful work, a lack of support for people's health and well-being, and not feeling that they're working in an inclusive environment. Kara did share with me that that's an issue for some of your subcommittees, talking about diversity and inclusion and how do we draw more women and minorities and BIPOC folks into your workforce, given the nature of the work you're doing. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So the highest ranked was salaries, bonuses, but also other factors, profit sharing. The money pieces, of course, are important, but what we find often is that it's not just the paycheck, it's some of those other components within that package. So people are reporting that it would take roughly 8 to 10% increases in salary to make them happy, to look at the better pay. But also, the pandemic has really turned everything on its head, as I'm sure you've all experienced. We've had to be much more competitive than we've ever had to be in attracting new staff. And as we have to pay more to get people to come in, you also have to raise all the ships at sea. So you also have to pay the incumbents more. So it's been really challenging during the pandemic with employees kind of calling the shots in terms of what they can command out in the marketplace. We've done a bunch of market surveys here, And if many of you are probably experiencing what we have here, which is that we can't meet the market. So then you start figuring out what percentage of the market can we pay at and what other benefits can we offer as part of that total comp to either make up the difference or show some of those more flexible workplace options. So if you have money, you can do that broad, sweeping total rewards review of where you sit within the marketplace, or you can talk about doing some cost sharing. I know at my last job in the private sector, we would give a percentage of profit into people's 401ks. If you don't have money, you can still put forth a total compensation program. And one of the things that we've done is providing total rewards statements. And so a simple document that lists all of the different components that are part of that rewards package, all in one place, to show the value that you as the employer are contributing towards your employees. So not just base pay, but all those other factors, and quantifying those and putting those in a report, which I'll show in a second. The second thing that you can do, which is tricky, admittedly, is to be transparent about your compensation process. And so one of the things that we've done here is actually publish our base pays for our different positions. And we've made a commitment here as an organization to try to get to at least 85% of the midpoint of the marketplace, knowing that we can't afford to be competitive at 100%. So we are showing our staff what the market will bear, what that midpoint of that market is, and then we are doing our best to come up to at least 85%. And in some roles, we're able to get to 100%. And in other roles, we're looking at how we can be more flexible in our benefits offering. So here's an example. This is a couple of years old now, but just to give you an idea, to show people the difference between what their actual pay is and what we're actually paying in on their behalf. So you can see this is an entry-level staff, and this is a little dated information, but so their base salary is $22,000. The value of their vacation is $1,026, holidays $1,069. You can see what we pay in on their behalf for employee assistance, short-term disability, life insurance, Social Security, and other mandated government programs, as well as people's health insurance. We contribute, you can see quite a bit in this case, $8,700 a year. So we pay something like 88% of the premium for our staff. So when you add that all up, the person's actual total compensation is $12,000 more than their base pay. So showing people that picture, so it's not just you make 15 bucks an hour, but the true value of your compensation may be closer to $20 an hour when you add in all those different pieces that the employer pays on your behalf. So if you don't do that currently, I highly recommend that you do that. It's a quick, easy thing to do to show people the true value that you're committing to on their behalf. And then this is something we did to show our staff by position, where they're slotted, where they fall in the grid, where the target is to get to the marketplace, what we're able to pay, and our cost of living. And then we also have a step system for length of service. So we're very transparent about what we pay, and there is an ability to move up within the system, but we don't have a lot of hard feelings or issues around internal equity, because people know when they apply to be an accounts payable clerk, they know exactly what that starting rate of pay is. And that's a scary thing in the private sector, but we've found that it eliminates a lot of the concerns about fairness and whether people are being paid appropriately. So those are no-cost things you can do. Second piece is a lack of career development and advancement. So if you have money, you can invest in career ladders, and you can have pilot groups of people that you're fast tracking and giving them specific trainings to move into leadership type roles. Another big thing that you can do that's not super expensive that we've done here is tuition reimbursement. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. I know in the private sector, they pay for your entire degree. Here at our organization, we have a flat amount we commit to through budget every year, which is maybe $20,000. And We give out the amount that we can afford on a quarterly basis based on the number of people applying. It might be $300 or $400. It might be $600 or $700, but people really appreciate that. We've also applied for a number of grants and some funding here at our organization to be able to pay for reimbursed employees who are working in specific fields. So part of the tobacco settlement that came through several years ago at the state was earmarked to paying people back that were working in substance use disorders, for example. So finding a way to do some tuition reimbursement is helpful. And then accessing online trainings. If you have the ability to have an online learning management system, that's hugely helpful for staff. One of the things we did as a mental health agency is we combined with all of our peers in other parts of the state, and we got discounted pricing. So we bought a product called Relias Management Systems, and it specializes in behavioral health care. And because we grouped together as 5 or 6 different agencies around the state, we got significant pricing discounts. And you can upload your own trainings into the system, or you can use the trainings that they have there. And we, as a trade organization, have shared our trainings and uploaded them into the system as well. If you don't have money, you can really be thoughtful about promoting from within. That's one way that people feel really appreciated and respected. How do we fill those positions? Obviously, it's harder to do that with entry-level positions, but if you have mid-level positions, you can move those people up from within. They already know your culture. You can help them to upskill if they need different trainings to be successful in that. You can conduct career path studies to see where people need to go. Just some things that we've done here. The top thing that says posted internally, we are very thoughtful about posting positions internally only for the first 2 weeks that we're running a job, to see if we have internal applicants before we go outside of the organization, to really show our staff that we're looking for people internally that we can grow into a position. Another thing we did was we spent a lot of time creating core competencies. What are the 10 things anybody that works here needs to know? And we've done trainings on those. And now we're doing divisional specific competencies and role-based competencies, and offering trainings within that Relias learning system, also in person, and training people up and offering workshops so that they're able to do that. We've developed a supervisory skills series. So you probably have the issue that we do. Sometimes people are underprepared to take on a supervisory role. How do we make sure that we're growing our staff internally so that they stay with us? So those are all things you can do that are fairly low cost, putting trainings together to support your staff. The next piece is flexibility. We're seeing a lot more, of course, flexibility because we had to be more flexible because of the pandemic. But people feel that they need to be able to balance all of those work-life issues that come up, right? So if you have more money, you could actually invest in home offices, not just sending people home, but actually helping them have ergonomic assessments, or making sure their equipment is appropriate to work from home, and making sure the folks that are on site have appropriate technology. If you don't have additional funding, really sitting down with people one-on-one and having those conversations about which positions are best served in person versus which of the roles can you be successful and functional in remotely. And as it says, flexibility doesn't mean the same thing to all of your employees. There are people who don't necessarily want to work from home. We have the luxury of having different buildings and different programs here. There's a building that we own in Waterbury that has clients in one part of it and conference space in another part. And sometimes I sign out that space and go there because it's quiet. You know, what are the things that we can do to sign out workspaces or to allow people to work from home so that people feel valued and we're still holding them accountable? So we came up with this workforce remote agreement where we actually talk about this is when I'm going to work. These are the days of the week. These are the shared hours of the day that I agree to be available for meeting times, right? And this is what I'm going to be working on. And this is how I'm going to provide evidence that I'm doing my work. And I'm going to have check-ins on a daily or weekly, whatever basis. and really making sure that everybody's on the same page so that we're keeping track of people, but also treating them like adults, right? So we're trying to be thoughtful about how do we ensure that people have the opportunity, the resources, and the tools to do their work, and also that somebody's checking in with them to make sure that we're not leaving them behind. You may have had the experience that we did here. It's a tricky balancing act here in our HR department. We only had one of our staff that went remote during the pandemic. And she was a great worker and certainly got her work done and checked in with us, but she felt really disconnected from the rest of the team. So you're always trying to balance who can do that work remotely. How do we still make sure that we're communicating and having those conversations? You know, a lot of that stuff that happens in the hallway when you're working together in the same building, that you're just sort of like, hey, oh, I'm glad I ran into you. I need an answer. It's 27, and you keep moving versus 6 emails and trying to, you know, get on a Zoom call. So really, we've worked really hard at trying to navigate, when do you need to be in the office? When is it okay to be remote? How do you balance all that? I have a dog that's completely neurotic at home, and I love her, but it's pretty hard for me to work from home, you know? So it's, you really got to sit down with each individual person and figure out what is going to work best for them. And then thinking about unsustainable work expectations. We were just talking about this here the other day, that it feels overwhelming when you're short-staffed and you're in a crunch. You have so much work to do. And when I do work at home, I end up working significantly harder, I think, than I am sitting at my desk, because you get up and go right to work. You don't have that commute. You don't have those other distractions. You're just, you're working straight through. So how do we make sure that our work expectations are realistic so we're not burning people out? I mean, we hear from a lot of our staff that work directly with clients that they're working overtime, they're working 2 jobs, really challenging situations. How do we address that? So if we have additional funding, we can make sure that our staffing levels are in alignment with what we actually need. Do we have an opportunity? We were just talking about this. Do we need to hire some temporary employees to help get us caught up, maybe administratively? Are there ways that we can offer on the spot type bonuses? We looked at hiring some temps to do some data entry for us as we're launching a new payroll system. And the temp agency was charging more than what we would be paying our own internal staff in overtime. So we thought, why would we pay somebody that doesn't know our culture when we can pay our own staff and then give them some time off? It's a time limited thing. Once we get this in, we'll give them some extra money now, and we'll give them some time off on the back end. How do we use our money creatively? If we have to spend the money, how do we allocate that in a way that feels fair to our staff, right? How do we figure out how best to use technology? One of the big pushes in HR for the last several years has been, how do we move away from being so transactional to being more transformational? How do we move away from some of the day-to-day data that we have to enter in payroll and other systems here in HR, so that we can actually affect the culture of our organizations and be more strategic business partners? So how do we leverage technology in a way that makes a difference? So for us, and I'm sure many of you have done this, we made the decision to go to Office 365 and the cloud a couple of years ago. So right before the pandemic, we were all set with Microsoft Teams and some of these other products. And to be able to share documents wherever you are on the planet and open up a live Google Sheet or Excel or whatever it is and work in that, and using technology to get things done without having to be in meetings all day and figure out who's doing what, has been really helpful. If you don't have additional funding, one of the things you can do is actually look at the jobs themselves. So you've probably had this experience where you get more work to do. You're doing 10 things and 2 or 3 are added, but 2 or 3 don't go away. So how do we sit down and figure out who's doing the work? Is it the right amount of work? Is it the right structure? Is it the right reporting structure? One of the things we do here in my department often is every couple of years, and when we change staff, We sit down and go through all the different functions we need to cover. And we try to figure out, you can do time studies to figure out what people are doing, what makes the most sense. Are there tasks that you can outsource? Are there tasks you can no longer do? Instead of running a report once a day, can you do that once a month? Are there other people that can pick up the work? Are the right people doing the right work at the right time in the right department? So we like to kind of shuffle things around and figure out, are we using the right skill sets, right? Do we have the right people that know what they're doing that work? So are there lower level tasks that we can either eliminate or reduce or find somebody else to support us with? So the other couple things which seem obvious are offer gratitude. Most people want to be told that they're doing a good job, or just checking in with them. And that, I think, is a huge loss during COVID, is that personal connection that we were somewhat spoiled with here in our culture. I know that we would see our supervisors and our managers and our directors on a daily basis and would travel to their buildings. So making sure that we're thoughtful about, hey, you're doing a good job. Thank you for all of your efforts. There is light at the end of the tunnel. We are trying to hire more people. We are trying to rearrange some of these job duties and really involving the employees in those conversations, so you have employee buy-in as you're figuring out what comes next. So I always say to the team here in HR, what do you want to do, right? So part of that is that performance management process as well. Like, what do you see yourself doing in the next couple of years? How can we help you grow into that? And you've probably all seen this as I have. I was at Red Hen Bakery in Middlesex a couple months ago, and they literally had a sign that said, "Hi, we're short-staffed. Please be patient. Thank you. Please be kind to our employees." And just being that transparent, that's sometimes we just have to put our hand up and say, we're sorry. We're doing the best we can. This, there's a pandemic going on. Really just being really clear that we're doing the best we can, and telling your employees that we recognize that we're short-staffed. We're doing the best we can. One of the challenges we had here is we lost our recruiter, had 2 recruiters, and we lost one of them. And so we didn't have a recruiter to hire the recruiter. And, so we had to say to our internal, colleagues, not only can we not help you hire people, but we can't even hire a person to help us to hire people to help you. So just being really transparent about that. And I was really delighted when we started putting up our hand and saying we're overwhelmed. Just thank you for telling us that. How can we help you? Can we get some of our administrative staff to help you through this period of time? Just kind of naming what's going on can make a huge difference. So knowing what a job consists of, doing that review of the position to make sure it still makes sense, expressing gratitude, and then just talking to people. I mean, we're fortunate. We have a very open culture here. We're very transparent. So that's been really helpful for us. And then concerns about leadership. And this is a national survey, not specific to any one organization, but people feeling like they're not being heard, that their leaders are uninspiring. People, you've probably heard this, that people don't leave companies, they leave their managers. That's definitely true in my experience working in HR, that people really want to feel valued and also inspired by their leaders. So you want to make sure that you are on those managers and you're holding them accountable for the work, that not just the work their supervisees are doing, but the morale and the commitment of those employees as well. I was reading something a couple weeks ago that some companies actually write into the performance evaluation of leaders that they are personally responsible for the turnover in their department. And if you start seeing trends that people are leaving a specific division or department, you as a management team need to step in and say, what's happening here? Is there a pattern? What is happening that's causing people from this particular department to leave the organization? Not in a punitive way, but hey, how can we help? Is it a training issue? Is it a communication issue? Is it the resources aren't being applied evenly or consistently across the organization? So if you've got money, you can really invest in some management courses. And you can also, I don't think it takes money for this, but you can evaluate and act on ineffective leaders. What are we going to do if people don't have the tools to be successful? And provide leadership coaching, mentoring, making sure that we have a succession plan, that we're growing people internally that meet our cultural values. And if you don't have funding, you can still communicate what your expectations are for your leaders. I know our CEO is very transparent about what their expectations are and the values they want us to model within our organization. You can also manage the weakness of your leaders by figuring out how you can support them. The example here, I think, is interesting. If you have somebody that's not a strong writer, can you support them? Can you either ghostwrite their emails or help them with their presentations? I remember a couple of years ago, we had somebody in our accounting department that would send out these very overly direct emails for our culture. Starting Monday, we'll have a new payroll software. You have to have your timesheet in by 10 a.m. or whatever she would send it. That didn't work for our culture. So there was a period of time when our CFO had me review every email that she wrote before she sent it out to soften some of the edges. So can we coach people to be more in alignment with the culture that we're trying to see within our organizations? Again, looking at the performance management process, I don't know how familiar folks are with a 360-degree appraisal, but I'm a huge fan of these. And as the name implies, you are getting feedback from your supervisor and also the folks that work with you and your colleagues. So it's literally 360 degrees around you as the employee. And if you guarantee confidentiality and anonymity, people will say stuff, right? They will tell you things that they wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable sharing with you. And even your subordinates, people that you supervise, that may not feel comfortable giving you feedback that might be critical, will say things in these 360-degree appraisals, which can actually be really helpful, I think. And I'll tell you a personal experience I had. I mentioned I worked for a renewable energy company. I was an accountant, and I didn't particularly like the work. I appreciated the mission of the company and the culture, but I didn't really enjoy accounting because I was much more a people person. We didn't have an HR department, so I did HR sort of too. We did a 360-degree appraisal, and I'm paraphrasing, but the results were something along the lines of, Susan is highly competent, a lot of fun to work with. She seems to hate her job. And the first one I read, I was like, ooh, I thought I was really better at covering that. And there were 6 or 7 of these, and they all pretty much said the same thing. I got really high scores in my technical competency and the work that I was doing, teamwork, lovely person, but every single one of them said, she doesn't seem happy in this work. And of course I was devastated because it was true, but I didn't want to admit it. And I wasn't prepared emotionally to deal with that, in the moment. So it was a real wake-up call for me that I needed to have that. I needed to hear that. And I don't think any of those people would have said that to me directly for fear of hurting my feelings. Does that make sense? So I feel like it was, for me, people having a safe, controlled environment to share what they really thought about my work performance in a way, and having, and in this case, we had an outside facilitator, so an objective person, an HR consultant, come into our company and share this information. It really changed my life. It sounds corny, but I got that information. I was like, okay, so everybody knows I'm unhappy. Maybe I need to look at that. Maybe I need to do something different. And that combined with doing some team building and some Myers-Briggs type trainings made it clear to me that perhaps I was not destined to be an accountant for the rest of my professional career. So I share that because I think a lot of people are fearful of doing a 360-degree appraisal because you have no idea what's going to come out. And somebody, there might be people that say unkind things, but the idea is to look for a pattern and to take that feedback to heart, and then to offer opportunities for training and coaching as a result of some of that feedback that you do get. So challenges with, and by the way, I can send you this data if people are saying you're going too fast. I can send Kara the actual data itself and the percentages. I thought it would be more important to spend our time talking about the what to do about it type stuff. So unsupportive people, if you have additional money, teamwork, customer service training can help with some of that. Having those team building events. And again, many of these things don't have to be high cost type situations. One of the things that we do here is we do an annual managers retreat. We have about 80 employees that are kind of mid-level managers and senior managers. We try to do something once a year where we all get together and we talk about our strategic plan, and we just kind of check in. We always try to build something fun in. We feed people something. So it doesn't have to be super expensive, but pulling people together from different parts of your organization, giving them an opportunity to have some social networking, but also, you know, having a work product that comes out of it can be really helpful to get people back into alignment across an organization. And if you don't have a lot of funding, making sure that you're really working on that supervisory feedback. So making sure that you're talking to people. You know, I do this a lot in HR. I have a meeting later today with, we have a director and their direct report, who's the second in command for a big division, several hundred employees. They're not getting along. And they kind of get locked into these power struggles where the person who's the director feels like the other person is undermining their authority, and the second in command feels like they're not getting the appreciation and respect of the person that's directing. So how do we step in and make sure that we're helping people supervise other people in a supportive way, not in a punitive way, but how do we hold people accountable and also, bring them up and train them to have stronger change management and communication type skills. And I love the creating a book club because I'm a nerd and I have a master's in literature. And we actually did that on our senior team. And it was really, really fun. Now, of course, we're also crazy busy with COVID that we haven't been able to meet for a while. But one of the things that worked for us was we picked a pretty intense book. Our first book was Me and White Supremacy. I don't know if anybody's read that, but it was fascinating because the book was very challenging and people were very vulnerable. So we had this book club meeting where people were able to actually talk about their experience about reading this fairly intense book. And I felt really closer to the folks that I worked with because they were willing to share their responses to this tough piece of writing. So all of those things, low budget, no cost type things where people can come together and share their thoughts and ideas can really help people feel more inspired and supported. Then we have a lack of meaningful work. I feel like in our field, this is not a big issue because that's the reason most people are here, is we're really making a difference. But some companies really struggle with that. If people can't see the connection between their day-to-day work and the end result or the business product, that can be a morale issue for people, right? So if we have a lot of funding, we can really do a push to increase corporate communications. We can send information out, really brand our organization, really tell people what we're doing and the good work that we're doing in our community and doing press releases and all that kind of stuff. We can also, again, make people's work more meaningful by, again, giving them the tools to be successful. So again, are there things we can automate? Part of the reason we're switching to a different payroll software is we're going to have a system that talks to each other. So our applicant tracking and the payroll, HR, performance management, all these different things that currently don't talk to each other, or our paper forms or Excel spreadsheets, are all going to be embedded in one software product. So we're not spending a lot of time, again, on those transactional elements. we're able to be more transformational and make those connections with the actual people, with our employees. They can spend more time doing the good work with our clients and not worrying about whether or not their timesheet was saved or they filled out the right form, to go out on leave or those other kinds of things. Those can be huge pieces to make people feel valued and supported within your organization. If you don't have a lot of money, how do we figure out as supervisors how we connect those dots for our staff, really telling them how important their work is to the overall success of the organization? And in our shop, we have a pretty small but mighty administrative group. Most of our employees are doing the work directly with clients or clinical work. So to get our administrative staff to see the value of their work, I say to them, we are customer service. We in HR, we are serving, our customers are our coworkers. And if we do a good job supporting them, they can do a good job helping people, making a difference in people's lives. So we're indirectly, somewhat vicariously helping our community by helping the people that are doing all that good work. And really showing people that direct line from you helping somebody go out on medical leave. This is the impact that it has. You've helped them stop worrying. You've given them financial security. You've explained how the health insurance works, and then they can go get well and come back and make a difference in the lives of people that are most vulnerable in our community. Sharing customer stories. One of the things that we do, I think, really well here in our shop is we're great storytellers. We love to have success stories. When our clients are successful, we are successful. We feel like we've made a difference in someone's life. We created a brochure several years ago I helped write it with one of our directors, of recovery stories. So people suffering from significant mental illness and how they were able to obtain housing, get a job, do things that mattered to them and made a difference in their lives. The other piece, of course, is really getting employees involved, making sure that you're asking them their opinions, that you're giving them opportunities to advocate for change or to weigh in on things like your strategic plan, or if you're thinking about changing a policy. How do we create a more participative management approach, making sure that we are forming committees? We're big fans of committees here in our nonprofit world, right? I used to joke, we used to have a committee on committees, which felt very Dilbert-like to me. You had to go to the committee on committees to get a charter to form a committee. So we're not quite that bad anymore. But how do we get employees to jump in? Here's a quick example of what we've done in our shop. Many years ago in the 90s, we created this group called Board Staff Management. Members of our board, staff members, and management come together, and their mission is to take some of the authority that would be delegated to our executive director and give it to our direct employees to weigh in on salary, benefits, and working conditions, to really empower our staff to make decisions on behalf of their colleagues. And you can see there's like the function of the committee and who's held accountable. And this has been hugely successful. So people, I liken it to Congress. Across our organization, you have representation based on the size of your division or your department. We come together once a month and we may be talking about changing our mileage rate, or we may be talking about changing our sick policy, or how do we, tuition reimbursement, or how do we give funding to people who are sick with COVID, any number of things. And this committee has these conversations and they vote on it. And unless it's, a huge financial expenditure, they have the authority to make decisions. If it involves a certain amount of money, they have to go to our board of directors. But they actually vote on any bonuses, any salary increases, there are changes to our benefit package. And it has made such a huge difference in our organization to have this committee that's empowered to make decisions. So once you have that employee buy-in and people have representation, they feel heard, they feel respected, and they're engaged. And people come to this meeting and they're really, we've shown them our financial statements. We've been completely transparent. We've given them the agenda ahead of time. They often give me homework from an HR perspective to go out and look at the law and talk to our attorneys and whatnot, but I'm a non-voting member, so it's really intended to be of the people. So something like that, can really make a huge difference in your organization. Just a couple other things. People talking about, the myths and the folklore of your organization, I think are hugely important. As somebody that taught folklore at CCV for many years, those legends, people really want to know what those artifacts are, what those defining moments are. And then the picture, you're all saying, what the heck is that picture about? This is Plucky the peacock. And Plucky, I found, it was one of my daughter's stuffed animals. We decided to go online and find a silly calendar. This is still in the employee engagement topic, in case you thought I've gone off the rails here. We found a calendar that had random holidays, so National Pistachio Day, for example. And we started creating contests every, couple times a month. Pick the number of pistachios in the mason jar, and whoever won the contest got this stuffed animal and got to keep it on their desk until the next contest. And people practically came to blows to win these contests for the pride of keeping this Plucky on their desk. So no cost stuff. We had pumpkin carving contests. We've had silly hat days. We've had like wear your pajamas to work, any number of things. You can Google silly calendars. And this was wildly successful. I had no idea how many people would jump in and play along with some of these ideas. HR, of course, has won many of these contests, so people think it's rigged. Another thing that's hugely been helpful for us is a stay interview. Now, some of you have probably heard of this, but more people are aware of an exit interview. So an exit interview is something that you would do as people are leaving your organization. And I'm a bigger fan of the stay interview. I'm less interested in knowing why you're leaving and more interested in knowing what keeps you here, right? So it's a very different proactive approach to employee engagement. So I had somebody leave one time. I was doing an exit interview and I said, why are you leaving? They said, my supervisor wouldn't give me time off. And I said, why didn't you tell me that? I would have helped you. And she was already out the door and had taken another job, right? So we did a stay interview several years ago. We asked people if they would fill it out through SurveyMonkey or if they'd prefer to come in person. And I had a couple people show up at my door. And these are the questions I asked. What do you like about your job? Tell me about a good day. I got to question 3, are you being used to your full potential? And this woman started crying and she said, Susan, thank you for asking. I could be giving so much more to this organization if you'd only let me. She was crying. And I looked at her and said, you want to work in HR? Can you start tomorrow? Nobody had ever asked her if she was working to her full potential, if she was being supported, if people were giving her the tools. So some of these questions, are you appropriately recognized? Do you have the right tools? Are you in the know when it comes to company information? These are great things to hear from people. And it's not all rainbows and butterflies. They're also going to tell you, the question is, describe a recent frustrating day on your job. And if you had the power, what would you change to make your job more enjoyable? And again, this particular woman said, I'm here to help kids and make a difference in their lives. So if I didn't have to do this much paperwork or I didn't have to do X, Y, or Z, it would be even better. But I love my job. And that's why I came here in person, Susan, to tell you how much I love my job. So it was a morale boost for me too. Like, hey, we're doing something right. So I highly recommend stay interviews, and you can do these online or in person, and you can aggregate the results, and then you can form focus groups to figure out, is there a pattern? Is everybody saying I have too much paperwork, or I don't like the working hours, or what are they saying, and what are the things that you can do with that information? In terms of health and well-being, I'm a huge fan of EAP, an employee assistance program. If it's under the additional funds, but it is money well invested if you're not familiar with it. Employee assistance programs, you pay typically a per person per month fee. I think we pay $4 per month for each employee, and it gives our employees a place to go. They have master's level clinicians that can help so emotionally, but they also have discounted legal fees. If you want to see an attorney, they can help you with filing for bankruptcy. They offer resources around childcare or grieving. They have come into our organization and offered mediation when staff are not getting along. They've done crisis debriefing when we've had significant injuries or trauma in our workplace or deaths of clients. They're definitely worth it. They do workshops on anxiety and stress, and I highly recommend doing the math on that and seeing if you can get an employee assistance program in your organization if you don't have one. Again, you can giving people an understanding, going back to that total compensation statement, but really being clear about what your benefits are and having webinars. So one of the things we do an annual benefits fair. We invite all of our vendors, all of our health insurance and other brokers in to explain the services that we offer. We usually have a smoothie truck, or we have fun giveaways and t-shirts. We have a really active wellness group here at the agency. We've won the Governor's Award for Wellness for many, many years. We have a portal and an app so people can log in and track, their walking and their different activities, and they can earn points and buy things through a little mall that we have. So really showing people their value. We offer yoga and Pilates and exercise classes here. We hold webinars. And the thing in the middle is a building that we have that has kettlebells and a gym and an artist studio. And so we've really, really, really heavily focused here on self-care at our organization. So those are, again, fairly inexpensive things that you can offer. I'm just trying to I'm being aware of the time here. In terms of concerns about not having an inclusive community, you can do surveys to see how people are feeling upon hire. You can you can create a formal DE&I policy. I'm a big fan. I'm on our committee. We've rebranded ourselves as the Social Justice Committee to be further reaching. But how do we ensure a warm welcome through orientation, really making sure that we're assigning mentors and buddies when people come into the organization, doing those surveys. One of the things that we did is we hired a consultant to help us facilitate our internal committee meeting. And they're a member of the BIPOC community, so they've been really invaluable. They're looking at our policies to make sure our policies are appropriate. They've given us a list of websites to recruit from. So websites specific to drawing in more of a broad, diverse applicant pool, and really helping us re-envision ourselves and we're about to put statements on our website and really trying to be thoughtful about diversifying our employee pool. So we really offer cultural competency, racial trauma trainings, and have done some community education as well. So again, those are fairly low cost things that you can do that can really create a more welcoming environment for your staff. So what can you do? I would start with a survey. We actually are about to launch our annual staff satisfaction survey. We've embedded very specific questions around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging to gather some information to see where we're at. But on a broader scale, you can ask any number of questions about how people are doing in terms of morale, supervision. Do they feel like they're communicated with? There's lots of different surveys out there. I'd be happy to send you some of the questions that we ask. Do a broad survey, I would suggest, and then have a focus group to kind of dig into the results, de-identified, and figure out what are the things that you can really make a difference in. One of the things we did when we wrote our strategic plan is you're immediately overwhelmed. Pick a couple things that you can do and be successful and ensure short-term success, and tell people we can't do all these things, but this is what we're going to focus on this year. This is what we're going to do. And really start to chip away at some of the issues that have come up. And just briefly, I can send you this PowerPoint, but some of the things that have worked for us, we've revamped our job descriptions to really standardize our postings. So instead of lengthy postings for each unique job, we've come up with some short and sweet different postings for clinical staff or direct service staff. We've utilized things like Front Porch Forum and Glassdoor and Indeed. We've ramped up our Facebook presence. We have an employee site where employees can connect. We've just revamped our website. We've also made some streaming videos that you can post on people that have streaming TV, like Fire Stick and some of those things. So people are watching HGTV, and you can buy zip codes so you can show an ad while they're watching their TV on their laptop type thing. We've also begun to offer housing for staff as we hire them if they're coming in from out of state, because I know that's a thing. We have the luxury of owning several buildings here. In terms of retention, just real quick, because I know we're short on time here. We had a pet photo contest we had over 200 employees send pictures of their pets. And we created an employee pet calendar, and they flew off the shelves. Like, these are little things that you can do that people went overboard with. We're having monthly socials for people to meet people from different parts of the organization. And the spam is, we have a Hawaiian day here where we have a spam carving contest. People make Stonehenge out of spam. We're talking about doing some CSAs and gardening for staff that are working 24/7 programs. We've got vendors that are in our community that are going to offer us discounts. We have a group that delivers baskets. You can nominate an employee that's worked hard and they'll bring a basket to their work site. We're creating a company store where you can accumulate points for going to trainings and then buy company swag using your points. And we've created a SharePoint portal with all of our news and community information about new hires and those kinds of things. That's a whirlwind tour. I could talk about any of these topics for 3 days, but I have a few more minutes if people have specific questions.
Yeah, does anyone have a question they'd like to ask before we sign off? And Susan, I want to ask that if we can get that PowerPoint and you had mentioned some survey questions, and then we can send this out, because I know some folks signed up in order to watch this later as well. So we'll make sure that we send this around.
Absolutely.
So are there any questions? I know we're right at the top of the hour. Well, thank you so much, Susan, for putting in the time and for your stories and your information. And thanks for those of you who've joined us right now and who will be watching this a little bit later. And we'll look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you. And if you have questions, just have Kara shoot me an email. I'm happy to help or send any documents that I mentioned. So
great, terrific. Oh, there is a question. Let me see. Or maybe that's just a thank you. A thank you.
Okay, I think that was overwhelming. But thanks, everybody. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Susan. All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.